out yet, that's strong. I would strongly recommend that. But you know what? In this particular circumstance, because we're not talking about a foodborne illness, we're not talking about intentional adulteration, we're not talking about widespread public health threat, talking about a chance of an issue. FDA is the least of your concerns. The bigger concern would be liability with your consumers, because if it goes out and someone experiences an adverse event, something that they claim is an adverse event, I would my concern, my bigger concern, if it were my company, is the liability associated with that, and not really what FDA thinks.
Got it. So it's like the consumer, or like the CSPA, whatever the new name for CSPA is.
I'm not sure what was that acronym you used?
The consumer safety, like the board
there are consumer activist groups, but they're not going to get involved in this because it's not broad enough.
Got it.
But certainly the consumers and plaintiffs' attorneys and so forth, that would be the bigger concern about allowing product out. Because some companies, look, I know because I've been in companies, they do look at these and analyze these situations on a case-by-case basis. And some do, in fact, go through a progression. Many companies have an SOP on how to deal with this, and they go through a decision tree, a progression, where they do contemplate, do we not do a thing and just monitor what complaints come in? Are there any complaints? Are there any adverse events? Should we just allow it out there? And, I know a particular case in my in a previous company where they, similar to you, found out that, it was technically adulterated, but that it wasn't harmful. And it had already shipped. Well, lots of product had already shipped. So they found out it was adulterated, but it was, with an organism that was not harmful. But they found that the levels were higher than, above than the specification that they had set. So they hemmed and hawed. They went in circles. What do we do? Do we just, we're not receiving any consumer complaints. Nobody's complaining about getting sick. We're not getting any of that, as far as we know. They actually contemplated just staying quiet and monitoring the situation. But in the end, they decided to get in touch with FDA and notify the agency, talk to them about it, and ultimately performed a recall. But it wasn't like, there's different classes of recalls. There's some recalls where it's an emergency. It's a food allergen, or it's salmonella. It's class 1 recall, all hands on deck. Everything has to be taken off the shelf. This was more of a passive one.
Got it.
It was, hey, guys, just return the product to us. We got to fix something. It wasn't an alarm. And it was probably that they did the right thing by talking, and they negotiated that with FDA, and the agency was on board. So that kind of covers their back in a way, that they took action, and they did what the agency recommended, and they didn't have to sound alarm bells and issue press releases and get a lot of negative attention, a lot of negative PR. So, these are the things you need to weigh out. Have you consulted a food and drug attorney?
No. This is a very, this just happened end of last week.
Okay.
So we are just trying. We are working with our legal group. Let me ask you this.
Okay. So,
in CRC, does it make any difference?
It does in terms of maybe the level of concern as far as kids being exposed to this potential, and we'll call it hazard, risk. Call it a risk. So that does weigh in, I think, as far as FDA is concerned, the agency's concern level. But that wouldn't preclude an adult from doing the same, thing, ingesting something by accident.
Okay.